Okay, Chris here. Welcome, everybody. We're getting started. We're doing our Extreme Beginner Series paintings, and we're actually going to do two wonderful paintings. We're going to do one painting, City Scene. We're going to do the glazing technique with this one. We're going to have a lot of fun. I'm going to show you how to get all the colors in the glazing technique, and we'll get the drawing done pretty quickly and efficiently. Nothing too fancy here. Some buildings and a few things, one figure and a truck, and you'll see how we develop the drawing as well as the painting, the glazing technique, how to do everything exactly in the right order so that you'll get a great result right out from the start. So that's our first painting. Then our second painting we're going to do right after that. We're kind of like easing up a little bit. We work really hard on this one. This one here is a little easier. We're just doing a beautiful, kind of like a landscape, maybe like near a farm somewhere in the countryside, and it's beautiful, and we're out there maybe walking around, trekking around and hiking, and we got some really gorgeous mountains in the distance and beautiful middle distance here with the trees and some foliage. We're going to show you how to get all these little details that really look great, and you can always take this and then do a larger concept of what we're doing here. But it's great to work in these smaller type compositions. I think it's going to really be beneficial for everyone if you're just starting out, especially, and welcome if you're just starting here for the first time with my channel. Please subscribe on the right hand side below so you don't lose me, and you'll get my updates on when I'm creating my new videos. And we're usually making videos at least once or twice a week. Sometimes we'll do 3 in a week, so you'll get plenty of time to work with lots of different subject matter and different styles of paintings and everything. And so let's get started in about just 30 seconds or so. Again, this is the second painting, a little bit more relaxed, not as much detail, and a lot, it's just kind of more of a fun painting to do. It kind of goes a little quicker, a little smoother, and it's perfect if you're going to do 2 in one day, let's say, or 2 in a couple hours, or 2, 3, 4 hours. You start off with your cityscape first, city scene, and then you do this more simple painting. But it's up to you. You're the artist. You'll figure out if you want to do just 1 in a day, or you want to do these 2 and another 5 in one day. You work as much as you want or as little as you want. Take your time, work at your own pace, at your own level, and we're just certainly going to have a great time, though, getting both of these paintings completed, and I'll cover every detail that I can and bring you all the information possibly that I can think of as I'm going and doing these paintings, drawing and painting these compositions. All right, so let's get started. All right, so let's get started here. We saw the finished paintings, and we're doing some compositions here in the studio, and we're just working in a smaller format right now. So what I'd like to do is, first thing is I took some Fabriano Studio watercolor paper, and I taped it down. So what I did is I trimmed a half a sheet of the Studio watercolor, which is I think 11 by 14. I trimmed that in half, and then I also taped it down to my working table here, and then taped it in half one more time. So basically we have 2 rectangles, and then I took I'm using a 5x7 mat, and I'm just going to make sure I have enough. Okay, so this is fine when I tape off this area twice, and I have 2. Let's just do this. We'll go around with a pencil so you can kind of see the border a little better, like that. And I'll do the same thing down here. So these are the 2 rectangles we have set up in landscape setup, and fits good. This is a 5x7 mat, and we have plenty of extra room, so that's good. That fits a small mat like that. Then what I'll do is I'll actually, so we don't splash and make marks and things on this bottom piece of watercolor paper, we'll just take a bit of printer paper, and we'll just mark out an area so that we can cover this with some paper. So I just make a mark on my paper like so, and we'll just use some scissors here. And we'll just trim this like so. This way we cover that. We'll do 2 paintings today. And again, this is a really great approach if you're just starting out in watercolor. This is an Extreme Beginner series. So when you're just starting out in watercolor, maybe your first 6 months, your first year, a lot of times it's really a good thing to sort of not worry about getting a perfect painting, but just do a lot of paintings and keep working. And so if you set up 2 paintings right here, right now, you're already guaranteed you're going to have, a 50% chance more success rate. So if you do your first painting and you say, I don't like that too much, I don't think it came out so great, well, that's okay, because you're moving right on to the next one here on the bottom of this page to work on another painting. And these are small enough that you can do many smaller paintings at first, get lots of experience doing smaller paintings, and then maybe after a while you start to work up to larger paintings. I find that this is helpful. This is how I sort of came up through the ranks when I was painting. I remember I did try doing some larger paintings at first, and then I also did do larger paintings here and there once in a while, but I did find myself leaning towards doing smaller compositions just by default, or I just did it because I felt more comfortable. I found that I had really good success when I did small compositions. So let's do that here. We'll start up here with the top one. We'll do like a cityscape, city scene. I'll take this printer paper and I'll just take a little bit of artist tape. And maybe I'll just make put 4 small pieces of tape here, all 4 sides, just so it's kind of secure there. And now that's good. That's covered, and now we can work up here. And then what I'll do is I'm just going to kind of make something up in my mind and think, well, let me think of a city scene, maybe a cool area with some buildings, maybe some sunlight in the composition. So I'm thinking maybe I'll make a building on one side over here. So I'll just sketch an idea of a building over here, and then maybe another building over here on this side. So I'm just getting some approximate. You can use a ruler, of course, if you like, if you want to keep your lines a little straighter. But we're also going to do other things. We're going to add, let's make some fire escapes on here to make it a little more interesting. So I'll just add some fire escapes on this building here, like this. And then so just make some indications of some fire escapes. No big deal. It doesn't have to be perfect. And then we'll keep this loose and fun. And so we'll have some of this here. And we'll kind of make the focal point maybe some figures. Let's do some figures in this. So we'll kind of make the buildings a little bit more abstract, let's say, just for the fun of it. So the angles on the buildings usually are more steep up here. So if you're seeing like angles on the building for like balconies or windows, as things go up vertically in height, they tend to start to angle up this way. And then as they come down towards the ground level, they level off. So maybe if you're looking at a balcony over here with some railings like so, it's more pretty much level. You can kind of see that. It's kind of level. And then as you go up higher and higher, the angles get steeper for let's say, the balconies here. So we're just going to do some balconies, some railings here, just indications of it. Again, let's have some fun with this. Let's sort of do it. This is a little bit abstract. Let's not kind of get too worried about every detail here. Let's just call this the side of the building over here. And then maybe in the distance over here, there's another few. Maybe there's another building over here. Maybe this is just like a one-story building over here. And then maybe over here we're going to have another building over here maybe, and we'll put some windows. Like that, so we'll just sketch in some windows. And what I'll do is I'll go over this with a little darker pencil line once I'm done. I'm just trying to sketch out the ideas first, and then we can, I'll go over this with a darker pencil line. Okay, so that looks pretty good. I'll make this one more in the distance here. This one's far off in the distance, this building here, a little bit anyway. And we'll put a bit of this on top of the roofs. All right, that looks pretty good. And then this one here, we'll have the same thing. We'll have some doors on this. Some doors here, another door over here. Maybe these are a little bit smaller here. And usually I'll correct some things. If I make these doors too tall, I kind of shrink them down a little bit. And then maybe we'll have a figure over here walking. Maybe we'll have this figure here. Then maybe we'll have another figure over here even too. This one might be a little bit larger, so this one's closer to us. That. Okay, so we have a couple figures. Let's do a little darker pencil line just so you can kind of see the lines I have here for these buildings. And then these are the balconies up here. Again, we're doing this very loosely. And these are basically rectangles and squares we're doing. Okay, like that. And then this is this here. I'll do some fire escapes here too. Just very kind of sketchy and nice and light, like that. All right, I think we have it. A good, just fun sketch to do. And we'll make sure our paints are, we'll spritz some water on our paints before we start. Okay, so this is always a perfect time. I always mention, take breaks if you need to. I tend to like to take breaks. I've just done the sketch. What happens a lot of times is maybe when I'm taking a break now for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, I'll come back and I'll look at the sketch and say, I'd like to do something a little different maybe. And then I can change my sketch a little bit if I need to, or I might just say, oh, it looks fine. I don't have to worry about it too much, but at least I have a little bit of a time to relax and then come back and step back and look at it first before I go in and start painting. So I'm going to do that, and then we'll get started in just about a second or two. All right, so we're going to get started now on our painting portion. Let's make sure we have clean water, so I always empty out my water bucket. And then pour in some fresh water into my water bucket. I always keep a couple bottled waters around just in case I forget to fill up my larger container. I usually keep a large orange juice container with water. Sometimes that goes empty and I forget to fill it up, and then I always keep a couple bottled waters local, in my studio close by, and just in case, so I can just not have to worry about that. All right, so now the first thing I'd like to do is I'm going to use a square, a square brush here, a flat brush. And these are made by Princeton Art and Brush Company, and I've covered these on my channel many times. So if you've been painting with me a while, you'll know all the brushes I use on a consistent basis. I really don't change much. I kind of keep the same brushes for beginner style, extreme beginner style videos like this. I'm using the Princeton Art and Brush Company flat brushes and round brushes, and I also use a really good Simply Simmons round number 9 brush, round brush too. This is kind of good. This really works well for what we do here on these paintings. And I think we'll be fine with these brushes. They really work great, actually. So let's get started here. I'm going to try to mix up some colors. I think I'm going to make these colors. We're going to paint light to dark. So we're going to do the glazing technique basically right now. We'll do the glazing technique and we'll kind of cover how that's going to work. So when we start out our painting, you can go with alla prima method, which is basically just really starting with the darker colors and then working into the painting using your darker colors first, and then, you know, just starting at one point in your painting where you think your darkest colors are going to be, and then you work from there, and then you end up finishing up with your lighter tonal values in your painting, your lighter colors, and more transparent colors, let's say. With the glazing technique, we're basically starting out with our lightest washes, and then from there we go darker from the lighter washes first. So let's get the lighter washes in here. So we'll put in some interesting sky colors here. Maybe a touch of orange. So I'm going to kind of make this an interesting sky. And you can always change if you don't think it's looking good. The color you might want to, you can always change. But since this sky color is light, we can kind of just cover the whole page with it, which is part of the fun of the glazing technique. Is you can kind of just take the color that you're starting with, that really light wash that we're using for the sky, and then you can just take that and cover the whole page with it. And then you might want to leave a few spots light. Maybe we'll leave some of the ground over here light, but I think the rest we can go with this wash over top. So there we go. We have a good start to the painting already. And this is where, with the glazing technique, you definitely have to let this dry now 100% before you start going in over the top of this with darker washes. So this is one of those things where I'm just going to stop the tape and let this dry. I'm going to use my blow dryer, and it takes usually only about a minute or two with a blow dryer. But you really won't notice that I'm, stopping the tape. I'm not really going to, but that's what I'm going to actually do right now, is I'm going to use a blow dryer off camera because it makes a lot of noise. And so let me do that. Let me just take a blow dryer. And once I'm done with that, the only reason I don't do things like turn off my microphone is then I forget to turn my microphone back on. And then when I start to paint again, I forget the microphone's off, and then I've, kind of painted, and, it doesn't work out good if I shut the microphone off. So I'll leave the mic on, but I'll just hit stop, and then we'll start in just a second. I'm just going to use the blow dryer again to blow dry this super dry so that it's 100% dry, because then when we go over with our darker washes now on top of this first wash, this has to be 100% dry. We can't have this damp or wet, because then it's going to make a mess for our washes. So that's the key right here, right now. That's really important. I'm sure you're getting this. You're really understanding this. And those of you that have been with me quite a while, when I'm doing the glazing technique, I always mention that. Oh, you got to let that first wash dry 100%, because many of you probably went in and started painting on a damp or wet paper, and you see that it just, the paint goes everywhere and just floods all out and goes places you don't want it to and all that kind of a thing. So we let this dry 100%, and then we'll see the good results we're going to get once we let this dry 100%. Okay, so I'll be right back. Okay, so we use the heat gun, the blow dryer, and that's 100% dry. Perfect. Now we're going to start going in and getting our additional washes in. So we're kind of thinking of some city buildings. What colors we're going to use? Let's use some yellow here. So I'll mix up some interesting washes for colors of the buildings. Some brown and yellow maybe. Some brown and yellow might look good. Some warm and cool, so we'll use some blue too. We'll use some blue, 2 different blues here. We'll use a little bit of the brown too in those blues to kind of gray those down a little bit. So we're kind of mixing Some interesting colors now here. Orange, yellow, some brown mixed in there. Kind of a warm sand type color. All right, let's get some of these colors and we'll try this here. Yeah, let's do that. Let's do these two buildings, that sand kind of color. And then we'll make this one a little different. And then we'll add a little bit of red down here with some brown. Maybe some purple in there. Brown, some purple in there. That might be interesting. Let's try it over here on this. Okay, so now we're doing that looks good. So we're doing some interesting, we're muting down our colors with some brown so that it's kind of looking like some grayish colors in here in the city. You know, the colors are kind of muted. There's a lot of shade in the city, the buildings, the high-rises everywhere. There's a lot of shade. So a lot of times you get a lot of those shadows and things like that. Let's use some brown and some blue. Some brown and some blue. Maybe we'll make this one a little bit darker yet, like that. That looks good. So again, here we go. We're just doing some simple washes here, mixing some interesting colors, graying down our colors with brown and blue. We're mixing warm and cool colors, so browns and reds. We're putting in some red here and there, some golds. Maybe we'll add a little bit of red here too. So if we add a little bit of red there too, that's going to look good. Maybe a little bit of, maybe over here we'll do that. Maybe we'll add some of that over here too. So now we're taking some of these colors that we're using here and let's harmonize all our colors around the painting. So I'll start to add in, and that's what's fun about these square brushes or these flat brushes. They're perfect for like architecture, like for your painting buildings, houses, things like that, structures. You get a great effect and a great way to get some great paint brush strokes and things looking really nice. And then maybe we'll do some shadowing here a little bit too across here. So maybe there's some shadows from this building here that goes across like that. We'll leave some light on the other side maybe, like that. And then maybe we'll add maybe we'll make some reddish brown here. Let's see what we can mix up here. Some reddish and brown, red and brown, red, orange, brown. Maybe a touch of blue. That looks pretty good. So we'll do a little bit of blue, brown, red, and we'll get this over here. We'll do the this building here. We'll go right across the figures. We're going to make the figures dark, and then we're going to leave that street area there a little bit light. So we're going to leave this light here for the light. We're going to pretend the light's coming from this way across. And these are the shadows from the building. We'll make those a little darker even too, with darker washes as we go. But we're doing the lighter washes first, so we're kind of on our second wash now, our second glazing where we're starting to get in some of those medium tonal values. That's looking good so far for us. And then from here we're going to get into the very, very dark washes next. But again, the same thing is with this. We could actually do a few of these, I think. So we could do some window like that. And then again, you could kind of see I'm not fussing around too much. Just getting in some windows. So we're using maybe just this one brush. I don't think we even have to use any other brushes. We might be able to do this whole painting with just this one brush. And so I'm just going to add a little bit of color, more color here. And that looks fine. So now that's our second wash, our second glazing. Now that we have that, we're really in good shape. We're going to, at this point, we're going to let this dry now 100%. We're going to do the same concept as we did when we first started. First wash, that really light wash, then we let it dry 100%. Now we go in with our second wash, which is our medium tonal values. Not quite super dark, but, you know, getting into the medium tones. That's good now. We've got all our medium tones in for our buildings. And then what we're going to do now is let this dry 100%. And again, I'll shut the tape off just for a second. I'll use my blow dryer, dry this all off. And then when it's 100% dry, which only takes about 30 seconds, then we'll come back in and we'll start doing those really, really dark washes, and you'll see things will really start to look fantastic as we put in those darker final washes that are going to really kind of give the painting a real excitement and have all the real dynamics of all the beautiful tonal value ranges that we're looking for. So we've got the light sky, we have some sunlight here going across the picture. We have our really nice, mostly predominant is the medium tonal values in this painting. And then we're going to do some of our darker washes next. We'll do some of the fire escapes and things like that, and some of the figures with the dark paints. And we'll use a round brush for the figures, I think. And we'll use some of the round brush maybe also for the fire escapes too. I believe we can use the round brush for those on some of the parts. And maybe we'll use some of the flat brush too for some of the balconies and fire escapes and things too. We'll see how it goes. But so far, so good. So let's take a quick break, and we'll let this dry 100%, and then we'll start with our darks. Okay, we're going to get started with our darks. Let's get some darks mixed up in our palette here. So what I'll do is I'm going to use brown, a very, very little bit of this black. This black is very strong in our Prang Oval 16 set, so I try to keep that in mind. I'll take some blue. Maybe I'll make some blue on this side. And purple maybe over here on the left side. I'll try to remember I'm doing some blue and purple over here. Maybe I'll make a little note on my palette just so I know. Purple and blue on this side, mixed in with the black and the brown. And then on this side here, I'm going to add maybe a little bit of red and orange. So this will be my warm and cool in my darks. So I'll have some red over here and an orange mixed in with the black like that. So that's a warmer black and then a cooler black over here. So that should give us enough variation in our darks. That should look really good. So what I'll do is I'll make sure I have now with me a tissue or a paper towel that I'll hold in my hand. I want to make sure I keep my brush a little bit dry. I don't want to go in with tons of paint with my darks. I want to try to kind of make sure I'm not adding too much paint, water and paint to the painting right now. So what I'll do is I'm going to do the figures last I think. But I'll start to get some of these darker washes going here. So maybe I'll kind of I'll go with a couple of, and again, I'm not trying for perfection here. I just want to get some darker washes like this. And then some of and I think I'm just going to do this really quick, not worry too much about it. Have some fun with this. We make sure we get those darks in there. And if you kind of notice that the darks are getting a little bit too light, you just add a little more, you pick up a little more paint. So I'm just going to do that. I'm going to make sure I pick up paint over here. Nice dark paint like this. And I'm just going to do that. Just some nice brush strokes here. Then, like I said, we can. Oh, I have another brush over here. I thought this might work good. This is another flat brush. The same thing, Princeton Art and Brush Company. It's just a little smaller flat brush. Maybe we'll try to do some. So I'll try to do this. I'll try to do some vertical strokes here for the fire escapes. Like that, like this, and then there's some stairs here. So usually the fire escapes have those stairs, ladders basically, like this, step, almost small steps going down. And then there's some other darks here. And then maybe we can get a little bit of this here, a little bit of dark mix in here, and just maybe we'll do a couple windows over here like this, like that. Okay, so we added in a couple of windows there. And what else do we have now? We're again working with our darks here, and they're looking really good. And let's go over here. We'll start looking in our darks over here. And this is important too, to remember this is, I like to leave some of that sparkly kind of look on there with the watercolor paper, since the watercolor paper can help us give some texture to the look of the painting. I'll leave some of those spots of like light, so it's almost like light kind of shimmering around here and there on the paper or the painting, or it's the actual wall itself. And then we'll take some more black and we'll start mixing again our brown and black here in the middle. Then I said I was doing red over here for a warmer, and orange and red. And then I rinse the brush off and I go in and grab some blue and purple over here. So some blue and purple to make like a cooler black. And then, see, that really looks good. Sometimes you can use some finger painting techniques just to get some interesting effects going. You can do a couple fingernail scratches horizontally to just bring in some interest to the painting. And then I'll just do this. I'll make sure I kind of get these level. So I'm kind of working the angles more steeper up here. Like that. Like this. Now, like that. And let's see, that looks pretty good. And then I'm always careful not to lean back in my paint. That's one thing you can find that can be a little bit challenging if you have to. I sometimes will. I sometimes have wooden trim and things around the house. I might use this to lean my hand on. So sometimes if you have a piece of wood or maybe a ruler, like a good ruler, that's probably like a piece of wood is better. Just like some wood trim or something strong that's not going to bend. And then you can rest your hand on it, because when we come over here to work over here, we don't want to lean back into that dark paint that we just put on. So that's the best way to do, is just put something there, hold it in, your left hand like this. If you're right-handed, you'd hold it this way and then rest your hand this way and paint this way, resting on the piece of wood, and then you hold the wood up on an angle so it's not touching the paper. And then you do this, and you just rest your hand on that, and you have your other hand resting on the paper like this, and then you touch the tip of this piece of wood up above the painting, and then you just rest your hand on that, and this way you can really zip along and get some really nice verticals like we're going to do here, quick and easy. Again, sometimes painting fast like this can really give you a nice effect of, just that look of, like a looseness to the painting. And I'll do some more railings over here, so we'll kind of pretend that these are balconies with some railings on the sides over here. And then you have the railings over here, like that. There we go. So this is pretty good. This is looking fine. And again, that looks pretty good. And then we can add some, maybe some darker darks down here in the foreground. Maybe this is like the first floor. So there's something a little bit different on the first floor maybe. Maybe there's some, there's something else on the first floor, different facades and door openings and windows on the first floor, usually. And then I think that's looking pretty good. All right, so we are really coming along here, and you can kind of see everything's sort of coming together. Let's do some, I'm going to use my round brush now. I think I'll use the my Simply Simmons round brush, and I'll use the darks again. I just want to get some, maybe some windows. Like this, some windows. Like this, I'll make them just dark windows here. Like that. And then I'll go across again with the railings for the balcony railings. Like that. And then usually, again, we're going to have some of these railings. They're going to sort of go over this way a little bit past the edge of the building, so we're going to see that like that. And the same thing here. We go a little bit beyond the building, and that kind of looks interesting. That looks like it's protruding out from the edge of the wall of the building. I think that looks good. Kind of like these over here. And then these over here, I left this here. Maybe we'll make an awning over here. Maybe we can make an awning. We'll make it something different. Let's make it maybe a green. So I'll use that Viridian type green. And that introduces a little bit of some interesting color into the painting. And then it looks like my figures don't look quite scaled correctly to the painting, and that's fine. That's when we adjust things. What I'll do is I think we're almost completed here. Let's make a few more, maybe a little bit more darks right here. I just want to get a little bit of dark, but not incredibly. And I want only a tiny bit of paint. And then this way I can just make this, just accentuate those doors a little bit, maybe a little bit of shadow under here. Like that. I think we'll leave the these buildings back here just the way they are. Maybe maybe just a tiny bit of detail on those, but not much at all. Maybe a little shadow there, but just the subtlest of details on these buildings, because they're in the distance and we're trying to make them feel like they're like kind of in the distance, and there's like a little bit of, you know, a little bit of haze back there, or it's a little bit softer looking. You don't really see the details in these buildings back here. These buildings are closest to us, so we're seeing more of the details of all the fire escapes and balconies and windows and the darker colors. And then this here is more in light. Over here it's more in shadow over here in this portion of the painting. And what we will do is definitely we'll add some shadow across here. Along here it's a little darker, the shadow, and then it kind of gets a little lighter. I'll rinse off my brush, dry a little bit of the water off on a tissue, and then I can kind of smooth out this shadow over here, like that. Like that. And then this here is maybe could use a little bit of orange, maybe just a little bit. And then we can blot that up maybe a little bit so it's light. It's the light, the sunlight, and it looks bright. But if it's the white paper, it looks like sometimes you can leave the white paper, but sometimes you have to add a little bit of an orange or like a golden color for a touch of a tone on the paper, like in a situation like this where we do have some sunlight here, because we didn't have white paper anywhere else in the painting, so it's probably better we just add a little bit of that golden orangey kind of tonal value to the paper. And then we'll do our figures next, but we're going to let this dry now, because if we try doing the figures after we just did this little bit of orange or golden color along this roadway here, this is like actually the road here in front of this building across the way. If we try doing our figures now, it's going to be an issue because obviously this is damp still, this paper. So let's take another quick break. I'll use, again, the blow dryer and dry off this section, and then we'll finish up with doing our figures, and that'll be a lot of fun. And I think I will explain how I'm going to adjust the figures because they look a little bit too large for the scene the way I painted it. I just think I miscalculated a touch on the figure size, but that's fine. When you're painting like this, you can step back, look at it, make a calculation or two, and think to yourself, okay, yeah, it looks like I drew in those figures a little too large, and then all you have to do is just make them a little smaller with your paint, and that'll be fine. So we'll do that next. All right, so we actually are right at the point where we're just finishing up here. We wanted to mention that this is the point where we can make the final adjustments to some things. If we, what I'd like to do is take some kneaded eraser, and I think I can, maybe I can lift up a little bit of these pencil lines with a kneaded eraser, but you would never want to do this if your paper was damp at all, because that would just tear the paper up really. That's fine. I don't think we'll worry about that. We're going to try to adjust our figures. So what I'll do is I'll just make a dark figure here, and I'll just shrink it down and make it smaller, like this. Okay, so we'll paint in that figure smaller. Still looks kind of large to me. And again, that's fine. We can do a lot of things. We could always take and make a car or a truck here in the picture if we wanted to, if that looked like it makes more sense to do something like that. So we would maybe put one figure and then one vehicle. Let's do that. Let's make a vehicle here. So I'll try to draw a vehicle here. Maybe like a truck or something like that right here in the front. Doesn't have to be perfect. Let's just make a square truck that looks like it fits with the picture, the scale of the picture. So I'll just get some of those darks we've been using, and I'll get a truck in here and see what it looks like. And I think that looks all right. So we'll get some tires on it. That looks good. So this is where we can and then I can take some paper towel or a tissue, dampen my brush, then dry off the brush a little bit, and then I can lift up some paint and maybe even make some details on the truck. So maybe there's a door on the back of the truck and it looks a little bit lighter. So I can lift up some paint. You could also take a tissue and lighten up with a tissue. Take a tissue and just blot up a little bit of paint. And then you can go back in and add some dark. Like that. Maybe make some lines across there. Like that. Usually the trucks have those roll-up doors on the back. And there's a little bit of shadow under there. We'll put a little shadow under the truck. That looks good too. Even though it's in the shadows here, it still looks good. Maybe we make some mirrors on this too. Sometimes it's good to have those mirrors on the sides. Like that. Maybe some lights on the top. Some marker lights. Like that. Then we'll do the other figure, but this one's going to be really, really small, so let's make sure we take the brush, we get some of that dark paint we mixed, we've been using. Then we do is we roll our brush around so that we get a point on the brush, so you can kind of see how we get a really good point on the brush when we roll it around like that on the palette. Then you could also do the same thing, take off some paint off that, and then do the same thing in another part of the palette where there's no paint, just to get that really good point on there like that. And then we'll do this figure here. We make this figure pretty small. Let's do that. Let's just make this figure like that. Just an indication of a figure here. And you always have a chance to, you know, work with the paint a little bit and get your figure looking good the way you want it. That looks good. That looks pretty good. A little bit of a shadow there. And yeah, that should be fine. Maybe we can get a little bit of a carrying a bag or a briefcase or something like that. Then we have this over here. We'll do the a bit of a shadow over here. And I think we could, this does like, this looks good now, I think, putting some darker shadows where these doors are, because we have a lot of darks on both sides of the painting, but I think we could use the, we could use some good darks over here on these two doors and this garage door over here too. I think that looks good. And I think a little bit of the dark shadows over here too might look good underneath this cornice of this building over here like that. And there might be some lights over here. So we might have a couple lights there by the doors like that. And then maybe we can even have, we could do a little bit of a sign maybe. We could do a sign over here maybe, like that. So it introduces, it's just another way we can introduce a little bit of interesting color into the picture. And then I'll just put a shadow there next to that. And so I think that's fine. We do a little bit of shadowing, some details. We did a figure, a truck. We could do maybe a little bit of lines here with some yellow and orange. Maybe we'll do just a touch of some lines in the road. Just a little bit though. I would do the same thing. I would get some of that yellow, orangey yellow, dry it off on my tissue or my paper towel, and then just maybe, you know, just to add a little bit of, just a touch to the road there. Maybe blot it up if it doesn't look good. Yeah, it doesn't look great. I think I'll just blot that up a little bit. Maybe it's okay. Maybe it'll look good just like that. As we take a tissue and kind of blot it up, it looks very, very subtle, but it does kind of add that little bit of color, and it looks realistic. You know, we see the yellow lines in the roads all the time over here in the United States. We have the orangey yellow road lines on all the roads that divide all the roads from the right and the left side. And so adding that little bit of color there, it looks good. And we could even do another, let's take our brush again, get some darks. Let's again roll the brush around, get a really good point on there, and then let's maybe we can make even a stoplight over here, So that's another fun thing we can add. So we'll add a stoplight there. Maybe another one over here too. And then what I'll do is for those stoplights, I'm going to take some red and just make sure I have plenty of red over here. And then I'll dry off the brush a little bit. Pick up some red, spin the brush around a little bit, and then maybe just put a couple dots of red for the color here for the lights, like that. And I think this is fine. I think this is a perfect place to just kind of say, this looks good, it looks finished, we have all the details now completed. We went a little bit extra with some additional details like the lighting, the stop signs, the little bit of road, the lines in the road, the orangey yellow lines in the road, and I think it looks perfect. So this is a great composition to have fun with, to practice loose painting, the glazing technique, which we did, of course. I noticed maybe up here this could be a little, you can get a little bit of a dark up there too, and then maybe this looks like we could do a cornice up here like that. Like that. So that looks better. Yeah. Maybe we can make that a little darker. There we go. And again, we said this was in the distance, so now is the perfect time. We take a tissue or paper towel and just blot up a little bit, because we did say it was in the distance over here. So let's not make that too dark. We'll just get that little bit of a shadow under there like that. And I think that looks fine. And maybe this too over here. We just wanted to add a little bit. There. All right, I hope we had fun. And this is just the first painting. Let's get another one started here, but I might reset the paper, and then we'll cover this top painting here with this same piece of paper. We could do that right now, actually. Let's let this dry, though. Let this dry before we put this piece of paper up top, and then we'll start our next painting right here. All right, let's take a quick break, and we'll get right back started. All right, so let's set up here for our next painting. And again, this is a really great and fun way to get some paintings going and not worry too much about just doing like one and focusing on one painting. Let's get a whole bunch of them going. Let's do another one right here. So now that this is 100% dry, I use the blow dryer to dry this off so that's completely dry. This way I can take this printer paper with the tape already from here, and I just set it up right on top of here so we don't splash and make any marks and things like that on top of this section here where our first painting is. So for our second painting, we'll just go a little bit more relaxed. We're not going to do anything too technical. We're going to just do a little like field with some trees and some bushes and some grasses and weeds and things. I thought that would be really fun to do after this painting. This painting is the one we would do first. Let's say if you're going to paint like both of these in like one day, or, you know, in a 3 or 4 hour sitting, let's say, maybe. Depends how fast you work. And I know all of you out there, you all work at different paces. So, you know, some of you are just starting out. It might take you a little longer to, you know, lay things out and kind of figure out where everything's going to go on the paper and then get your sketch done and then start your painting. So work at your own pace. Don't feel rushed. Take your time. Just work at your own pace where you're at. So if you're just starting out your first year, let's say, or your first 6 months or first couple of weeks, whatever it is, and I know, welcome to some of you that are just coming here for the first time. Thanks for coming by. And I'm so happy that you're here working along with us. We're having a great time. We're having fun. This is just all about let's keep working and getting paintings under our belt, doing small sketches. Again, we said right in the beginning of this video, this is a great way to just get a lot of practice in. Practice different styles, practice different subject matter, so that we're not just getting locked into like that one painting kind of thing where we just start focusing on one painting and correcting things and getting frustrated because maybe it doesn't look so good. I went through that when I first started, and I really did. Again, I think I mentioned this earlier. I found that doing smaller compositions like this and doing a lot of them was actually more beneficial for me in the beginning when I was first painting, my first couple, 2-3 years. because I made good progress that way. At least I felt like I was making more progress once I started to do the smaller compositions. And I also did some larger ones too along the way here and there as I was going. But again, these are great. So let's do a quick idea of maybe we're going to go about 2/3 of the way up. So we could take our paper and say, let's make the paper divided in 3 equal parts. Let's say 1/3 here, 1/3 here, and then another third here. So we have the space divisions, 1, 2, and 3. And then we'll say this is going to be the hills up here. So let's make some hills. These are mountains in the distance. We'll do our first mountain across there. Mountaintop, hilltop. Then we'll go across here and just make like a field, right, you know, kind of like a field right before the mountains start. And I'll do this a little bit darker so you can see. So this will be the field. And then this is going to be the mountaintop here. Like that. Then we'll go across here. And we'll just start making a little bit of a bush over here. And then let's start getting in some trees. Okay, so I'm just going to start putting in a few trees. Maybe one we have straight, like this, vertical. Then we make a couple next to that one, like a little bit leaning. Like this. And then maybe another couple of trees over here. This is leaning, this one's leaning over here too, and then maybe we have one this way. This way. So we're just going to make some trees over here, and I'm just kind of mentioning as we go, when we're doing trees, they're kind of pretty straightforward. There's different varieties, of course. There's really thousands and thousands of varieties of trees, probably tens of thousands. I'm thinking probably. When we're doing trees, I think I can use a Sharpie. Maybe that's gonna, and I have to be careful not to. So when we're doing trees, basically, a lot of times when we're doing trees, it's more of a fun, just kind of bringing up the vertical lines for the trees like so. You know, maybe one is straight, perfectly straight, and then maybe another couple are leaning in this direction, and then maybe another one leans this way. So you kind of get variety by making like one or two straight, and then a couple other ones leaning. And that's if you're kind of painting drawing and painting like a grouping of trees, let's say. And then for the branches, typically, like let's say your ordinary trees you might see out in the woods and the forest and the parks and things, most times the branches are more in an upright fashion like this. And then a few branches might kind of, at the bottom, a few branches might be like this. But a lot of times at the tops of the trees, you'll notice they're kind of more like arrows, like upside down arrows or arrows pointing downwards. That's kind of the feel for the branches. And then you can branch them out. But it is kind of like arrows going downward like that. And that's a good starting point if you're practicing your tree branches and things. And your tree trunks, you get the first line going, and then you can make them a little thicker. Once you get a couple of the vertical lines going for your trees, then you can add some thicker tree trunks like that. And I'm just using the Sharpie marker so we can see it really well here. But that's really, and then, you can make some smaller twigs and things, and then some couple little quick upstrokes here and there for maybe some weeds and branches and things, or brand new trees just starting out, coming along here. And that's kind of like a good way to kind of work it. And then again, you do have a couple of the branches there, here and there, at the bottom of the tree, usually the bottom of the trunks of the trees, you'll have some, and then if you have a pine trees are a little different, right? They're kind of, they have that downward arrow kind of idea at the top, but then usually as you're going out this way, they're more the branches are kind of level. They kind of on a little bit of a level. And they, some of them branch down, some of them branch up a little bit like this, some down, some up, and you can kind of just get and then you can kind of fill in some darks here and there in there. But that's sort of like a pine tree idea of the branches kind of going more level like this across this way. And then at the top, usually the pine trees probably have more, again, that 45-degree angle almost at the tops. But let's continue on here. Again, we have a good pencil sketch now of the trees there. That's good. Then we're going to continue, and this kind of looks interesting too. It's fun in a sense because you can kind of, if you were walking through the scene, you can kind of walk around the trees over here. You could walk around over here. You could walk in between them. So this kind of is a good effect. We could also put some bushes and things on the sides here of the trees, like this. And then we'll just make some lines for some grasses and things across the picture like this. And then as we get closer over here, we'll do some more grasses and things like this. We'll do this with the brush though, but you'll see that we kind of, and then closer to the bottom of the picture, you can get some more taller grasses like that. But I think that's fine. Just getting a good, fun looking landscape here with some trees and mountains and some weeds and grasses and things and bushes. And I think that should be fine. So let's take a quick break. I'm going to clean up the palette a bit. So what I do is I usually just spritz the palette. For the next painting, I'm going to clean the palette up, spritzer bottle, and then I grab some paper towels, and we just get a good bit of paint up here. It doesn't have to be perfect, but just as long as you get the majority of the paint that we used before sort of cleaned up, then we're good. We'll actually have a good new working surface here for our palette. And I think that's good. So I will take a quick break and we'll be right back. All right, so now we're going to start our second painting. And what I notice right away is usually when I'm painting, I'll always, before I start painting, after I do the sketch, I'll kind of look at the subject matter in the painting, and I'll say, is this going to look better if I do this with alla prima or if I work with this doing the glazing technique? So the first painting we did definitely was a very strong, to me when I looked at the painting, I said, that is definitely going to be a glazing technique painting. And then when I looked at this, I said to myself, once I got this pencil drawing done, I said, yeah, this is definitely going to be an alla prima painting, because I really just look at it right away and say, yeah, there's a lot of lights in here. So, the darks, there's just something kicks in my brain and I say, yeah, this is probably going to be better doing alla prima. Although you could do this with the glazing technique. You can do all paintings with the glazing technique or all paintings with the alla prima techniques and methods. That's up to you, and you're the artist. You'll figure that out as you go. But here I think we are going to do the alla prima method. I think this is the way I would approach this painting. So I'm going to look at everything, and I'm going to get some brown here, earth tones. So I'll start right out with some brown in the palette. And I'm thinking some purple up here and some green here. So I'll get some greens here, and I'll put some, make that an earthy kind of green, olivey green. And what else are we going to have? Maybe some. So what I'll try to do here is mix up some of the colors that I kind of feel I'm going to be using. So this is like a lemon yellow. And then I'll put a touch of green in there. maybe on this side. So I'll give myself some variation within these mixes. So what I'll do is I'll just think to myself, let me mix up some colors in my palette so that they're all in there prior to me starting the painting. So this way I'm kind of already got a game plan of what colors I'm going to sort of use. Like for the leaves and the trees and things, I'm going to use some of this yellow and some of the green, like the light green, kind of like a leaf green, and the yellow for some of the leaves on the trees, some of the bushes maybe, and then this olivey green, I'm going to use that too for the leaves on the trees and so forth. And then the purple and the brown I'm going to use for the mountains in the background there. And then of course we'll use some browns and oranges for some of the there's some like maybe some mud and some dirt in the scene too. So we have some dirt and some red too. So I'll mix in a little bit of red there for like that reddish brown. And I think that looks pretty good. We have a good start to some colors. And again, I'll mix this purple, make it a little bit muddy with some brown there. And I think this will be fine to start with. So let's get in. We'll do our distant mountains. Let's have some fun here. Usually I just press down the brush, and I keep my brush the same way I'm going to sort of be going across the page. And again, I have quite a few brush technique videos. You can always look up brush techniques, painting techniques by Chris Petri on YouTube. You'll find them. Also, if you're interested in, I have a new book out. You can get it on Amazon. I'll leave links in the description below. And also, too, if you're really enjoying this tutorial that we're doing here, you can always hit the subscribe button. That means you'll just be alerted when I'm making new videos. And we're making new videos here every week. So at least 1 or 2 videos, sometimes 3 videos a week. So you'll have plenty of content to keep busy and really keep practicing up on your watercolor skills. Plenty to work from. I know some of you, sometimes you'll see certain paintings and say, I don't really want to paint that one. And that's why I try to change my subject matter as I go, so that I don't just do one type of painting all the time. I try to mix it up so everyone gets their favorite paintings that they like to do. Maybe some of you like to do these landscapes, but you really don't like to do city scenes, or maybe you like to do flowers a lot, and you're not, so you'd rather do those. I totally get that. So I try to do a little bit of everything. And I'm going to add a little bit of green to this mountain area too. So let's get a lot of variation in color. I'll put more of the green colors in the bottom of the mountain area. So maybe we can actually get like a feeling of the purple is sort of the distant mountain range. And then when we take the brown and green, that can be like another additional mountain, or actually like a tree. A tree line in front of the in front of the mountain range. So you can even kind of go up above the mountains in certain areas to kind of so we can kind of have some trees maybe in front of the mountain over here. Like that. That tends to look pretty good. So we're kind of and then I'll do a little bit of a shadow line under there, like so. So you can get some pretty interesting effects. Like I would do the kind of the tree trunks first, and then underneath it a shadow line like that. That tends to work pretty good. And that looks pretty good. So we're going to let that dry for right now. Let's maybe do a little bit of, and this is going to go a lot quicker. We're having fun here. This is enjoyable. Kind of a no stress type of painting. We're just getting in some, you can do some finger dabbing and finger painting style to get some bushes and kind of like foliage and things like that, just to get a little different variations as you go. Maybe this is more green. Again, we'll mix up some of these yellows and greens too. We'll make it up front here closer in the picture. So in the distance, the colors might be a little more blue and purple. And then as we get closer here, we'll get more greens, more lively looking colors. I might take some of this and do some splashing too. And if you're splashing, go someplace you don't want it to, you just quick lift it up with a tissue. And then at the end of the painting, you can always use a little bit of white paint to go over a few spots that might have, if you splashed it and it went somewhere and it made a spot and you couldn't lift it up, that's okay. You can add a little dab of white paint, titanium white, straight from the tube. And let's see what else. All right, so we have some greens here. I'll take some more of this here, and this is where I start to grab some paint. Then I dry off the brush, take off some of that extra water and paint, and then I can maybe start to do a little bit of scrubbing across the paper like this. You can kind of see how you get that little bit of a, you see the texture of the watercolor paper. It looks really good. Do the same thing here, a little bit of brown, a little bit of green, dry off some of the paint. Then I can go in and get some bit of splashing there. And usually the darker colors are in the foreground closer to us, like over here. And then they get a little bit lighter over here. Like that. I just go across and so far it looks like we're doing pretty good here. We're going to get some green paint there. As we get closer, we can get a little more lively green there, some yellow and more yellowish green, just to kind of give it a, there we go. And we scrub around a little bit. You might lift up a little bit of paint. And you're always experimenting as you go. You experiment with your brushes, your paints. It's, you know, especially if you're just starting out your first couple of years of watercolor painting, that's the time when you're just having fun. Experiment with things, you know, use different things, blot things with your tissue, scrub around with your brush, get the feel for your brushes, see what they can do. The paper too, whatever paper you're using, see if you can get some effects like this, some kind of that broken effect of like some light in the picture, some sparkly feeling of light across some of the areas with that. This is the Fabriano paper, so it has that nice texture to it. And what else we can do here? We can take some of this green and then sometimes you can add in some more interesting colors toward the center of the picture, and then maybe on the sides here we can leave the sides of the picture closer to the borders of the ends of the picture. We can leave those areas a little softer, not as like, we could put more of the exciting colors maybe toward the center of the, like this. Maybe take some straight yellow and get some interesting colors going there. And then let's, I did some washes over here, so I don't want to These would be we'll do the trees last. But we could scrub on some paint for the tree leaves. So let's do that since that's up high here in the sky. But actually before we do that, let's get some sky wash in. So we'll take a little bit of the blue. We'll just get in some blue in the sky. Maybe I'll use a couple different blues. So I'll use this blue here. This is kind of like a French ultramarine blue. And this is kind of like a cerulean blue. And so we'll just take some paint, get it on the paper, and then look, we just let it work around. No worries. We get some paint on the paper, then we rinse the brush off, and then we use a damp brush like this. And if we get a little indication of some sky color, we're really in a good point of the painting. We're getting some of that. And when you paint in some of the darker blue, you can actually create the clouds by painting around the clouds, the tops of the clouds, or underneath the clouds. You can actually get that feeling of clouds. And sometimes too you can just do a little bit of blotting to get some clouds. And that looks good. All right, so I think I'm just going to take one more break and we'll finish up the trees next. And the only thing I want to do is just use the blow dryer. So we'll take a quick break for 5 minutes and then I'll use the blow dryer, dry this off 100%. And then we'll come back and finish up the tree trunks and trees and the branches and a little bit of foliage on there, and we'll have a completed painting. All right, we'll be right back. Okay, so let's get back to the trees here and the branches. Let's get those in. So I'm going to go in and get brown, blue, purple, and I'll try to get like make a darker brown here. So I'll take some of that brown, and again the blue, mix in some blue, maybe a touch of black. Then I roll my brush around and I try to get a good point on the brush. And then I'm just going to try to see. I'll start over here because since I'm right-handed, I'll work this way, across this way to the right. So again, I'm just going to trace right over the tops of the... Now if you find that a lot of times it's good actually once you get your paint loaded onto your brush from your palette. And notice here I'm using almost zero water. I just use my damp brush basically to get my paint. And then I just mix out my paint a little bit, the blue and the brown and a touch of black. And then what I do is there's hardly any water in there at all. And then you can even tap on a tissue or a piece of paper towel first before you start doing the tree trunks, because they're very small here in the picture like this. And so if we can just sort of use the minimal amount of paint as you have to, and especially on the tops of the trees. So and don't forget too, we're going to paint some foliage on top of these trees, so you don't have to do too much. The trunks are the most important part. So let's get the tree trunks in like that, and just, but I am going to go over the pencil lines that I did for the most part, because we already did the work. Might as well just instead of reinventing the wheel, let's go right over the tops of those pencil lines we made. Good. Like that. smaller little bits of some branches and things there, and some trunks. All right, good. Now we'll rinse off the brush, dry off the brush a little bit on the tissue, and let's pick up some of these greens here. Let's make this sort of very hardly any water at all. You almost just want to have a damp brush and no water on the, because you can kind of see how there's a lot of water here. So this would be like that. That's way too much water for these. We're going to use basically just almost straight paint with no water in it. So we rinse our brush off first, dry off the water out of the brush onto a tissue or paper towel or a sponge. Then we go in here and just pick up just the paint with no water in it, really. Just like that, just the dry paint. And then we'll take our brush and hold our brush on the side and kind of just do a circular motion just to get a little bit of foliage on there, but not much. All we need is a little bit to give it that look of just nice and light feeling of some, like that. That looks pretty good. Then you can go in and get it maybe a little bit darker, get some brown. That brown we mix with the blue and the red. And so we just make ourselves a little bit of a darker olivey green, a little bit more green there. Mix up what you need, try to get and I say a little bit darker for the underside, maybe a little bit of blue in there. And then you can just see how that's a little bit darker. So it's a little darker at the bottom. And then up top is where the sunlight is, so that's going to be a little bit lighter. So your darker leaves and things are at the bottom. And you can just scrub around in a circular motion. But the key is having a dry brush. You don't want this brush with a lot of, you don't want any water in the brush. You rinse off our brush. We rinse off our brush. We dry all the water off on, again, the paper towel, sponge, or tissue. Then we go in here and get this really just the remainder of our mixes with no water, just straight paint, basically. And then we do this round scrubbing kind of thing. Like that. And not too much. Again, we're just trying to get a little bit on there so that we feel like we have some leaves, and that's good. Then we can do a little bit of a couple of little upstrokes with our brush like this. Here and there, not everywhere, just a few spots here and there. And then what I'm going to do is actually, I found this brush. I got this on sale like, years ago online, maybe like $1 for this brush. And it's kind of like a very, very, very bristly kind of brush. The hairs are very coarse, and you can kind of see that. This would be good. We'll dampen this brush up a little bit and then take some of the water off. And then we'll try to pick up some paint and mix up a little bit of paint, the dry paint actually. Let's use that. I think there was some dust on this brush. Got me. Ooh. And okay, so then I take the brush like this, and then right in the foreground here where there's more detail, that's where we can pick up some of this detail like that. I apologize for that. I think there was actually dust in this brush, and when I was kind of moving the bristles around it, the dust was starting to. All right, so now let's see here, brown, and then we would dry off again the brush a little bit, and there we go. See how good that looks? So wow, you can get some great effects with these. You can make a million blades of grass here and weeds and things like that with this one simple brush, a little larger, and you would only do this in the foreground though, because remember, as things go into the distance, everything is smaller and you can't see as much detail. So that's all we kind of think about with that. And then we'll take some more paint, and again we're gonna use some green and some brown. Green and brown, a little bit of blue, a little bit of red and orange maybe too. Let's make it like a good. Then I'll take the brush, roll around the brush to get a good point on it like that. And then we're just going to do a few weeds here in the front, a couple blades of grass, like that. And that's it. A couple of these, and it looks fine. If we wanted to, we could do a couple fence posts. I would do some orange with that and make it like a orangey brown, like that. And then I would do the same thing again. I would take a tissue or a sponge or a paper towel, dry off the brush a little bit first, and then let's do some fence posts, kind of leading ourselves into the painting. So I just do that, like that. That's one fence post there. And then we'll do another one here. And all we're going to do here is make these smaller and smaller and thinner as we go. So each time I move closer, or each time I move further away and into a middle distance of this picture by the trees, every time I move closer with another post, each post is going to get thinner and smaller in height. So that's all we have to remember. So it's going to get thinner, and it's also going to get, let's keep the heights the same. So we'll do that. We'll keep the heights of these the same, going in like this. And then we also want to make them, maybe one is leaning over, a couple of them are leaning over here and there. We don't want to make them all perfect. That wouldn't look good. And then we'll do that. And you can kind of see I'm making them thinner and thinner. And kind of closer too. They get a little closer as we go. And what that does is it makes the painting look three-dimensional by doing something like this, adding these little fence posts in here. And this could be, put a couple like wires there, so this could be some wires. And you wouldn't probably see the wires in the distance over here, but you would see it over here if you had some wires, like maybe there's a pasture and there's some cows and things like that here. It's like a farm scene. And we don't see the barn, let's say, or anything like that, but we're starting to see some things like this, fence posts and things and barbed wire, and so we kind of know there's probably a farm right close by somewhere right here in this happy painting, and then we can just kind of think in our minds this might be a farm, and we're walking around getting a hike in and walking around and getting some fresh air and looking at the beautiful trees and the mountains, and next thing you know, our minds are off whatever things that might bother us, and we're having a fun time just painting, and our minds were kind of visiting here in this painting and visiting into the scene, and I think it's really a lot of fun. So I'm hoping you all had a great time doing these paintings. What we'll do now is we'll just peel off the tape, and again, I like to tape when you're doing small compositions. I'm hoping you're going to tape around with some masking tape, or artist tape actually, or drafting tape. Drafting tape works the best, I think. Drafting tape has a little bit less tackiness to it, less likely to tear the paper. And also, too, there's the painter's tape you can get at the big box stores, like the big box stores that you buy, like all the hardware and stuff and all your home improvement stuff. They have the stuff, it's called painter's tape. It's like comes in different colors, purple, orange, green. You could use that tape, too. It won't tear your paper pretty much, especially the purple color. And there's a couple of blue tape, too. I think the blue tape is pretty good. But as you can see, as we peel the tape off, we'll start to see how really good everything looks. It looks like it's framed out. And especially this one here with the dark. With all the darks and the glazing technique, and then you peel off the tape, it becomes like a beautiful, framed painting almost. Look how great that looks. And this one too. This one looks fantastic once we lift off the tape. So this is... and I hope you'll sign your paintings when you're done. Put your signature on the bottom of all your paintings as you go. And we can also, well, what we'll do is maybe we'll trim this in half eventually. We'll make a center mark here, and we'll trim the paper with our scissors, and we'll have two separate paintings. And again, we did create them so that they could work with a mat over the top, like that. So I think that really looks good. I hope you had fun, and we're going to be back soon to do more paintings just like this, and especially the Extreme Beginner series. I always am going to be creating Extreme Beginners series paintings, as well as more advanced paintings and tutorials. And also, too, we're integrating in some new plein air paintings. So we're going to actually go out on location, different places nearby. My home in Fairlawn, New Jersey here in the USA. So we're going to go, maybe the next time we're going to go look at a waterfall, or maybe go to the park and paint some flowers. We don't know yet. We're just going to have fun. I'll just take it as it goes. But happy painting, everybody. Enjoy, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.